I dragged my suitcase up the steps and heard laughter like a funeral celebration. My dad stood on the porch, holding a beer, and told me I did not have a home anymore. My brother grinned, saying they had sold it while I was in Okinawa. I did not cry. I just smiled. They did not know the house was actually something else, and the moment I spoke, everything they thought they controlled began to crack. My name is Maya Calloway. I had been traveling for 27 hours straight. My joints felt like rusted hinges and my eyes burned from the recycled air of 3 different planes. Okinawa was 6,000 miles behind me, but the humidity of the Japanese summer still felt like it was clinging to my skin under the dry Wyoming wind. I just wanted my bed. I wanted the smell of the sagebrush that grew around the foundation of my house in Ashford Ridge. I wanted silence. I pulled my rental car into the driveway. The gravel crunched under the tires. It was a sound I had played in my head 1,000 times while trying to sleep in the barracks. It was supposed to be the sound of safety. It was not. They were waiting for me. My father, Warren Calloway, and my older brother, Trent. They were sitting on the porch steps, like 2 vultures who had just finished picking a carcass clean. Warren held a can of cheap domestic beer in his hand. It was sweating in the afternoon sun. Trent was leaning against the railing, picking at his fingernails. He looked bored. He looked like a man who had gotten away with murder and found it tedious. I got out of the car. I did not even reach for my duffel bag in the trunk. The atmosphere was wrong. It was heavy. It tasted like metal. Warren stood up. He did not smile. He did not open his arms to hug his daughter, who had been serving her country for the last 2 years. He just took a sip of his beer and watched me walk up the path. "You made good time," Warren said. His voice was flat. "I took the early flight," I said. "Why are you guys here? I thought you were staying at Trent's apartment." Trent laughed. It was a sharp barking sound. "Apartment is gone, Maya. Had to consolidate assets. You know how it is." I looked at the house, my house, the one I bought with my enlistment bonus and the small inheritance Mom left me specifically, the one I paid the mortgage on every single month without fail. "What do you mean, consolidate assets?" I asked. I took another step toward the stairs. Warren held up a hand. It was a stop sign. "Don't go in there, Maya." "Excuse me?" "It is not your house anymore," Warren said. He said it with the casual indifference of someone commenting on the weather. "We sold it." The world tilted on its axis. The wind seemed to stop. "You what?" "Sold it," Trent said. He pushed off the railing and stood next to Dad. "Closed the deal 3 days ago. Money is already in the bank. Well, most of it. Had to pay off some people." "My gambling debts are cleared," Trent added. He sounded proud. "Clean slate. Dad helped me out. We had to do what was best for the family." I stared at them. I felt the blood draining from my face, but it was not fear. It was shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. "You sold my house to pay for Trent's gambling addiction?" "Watch your tone," Warren snapped. His face went red. "Your brother was in trouble. Real trouble. Bad people were looking for him. We did not have a choice. Family makes sacrifices for family. That is what we do." "I did not make a sacrifice," I said. My voice was trembling, but I forced it steady. "I was robbed. I am on the deed. You cannot sell a house that does not belong to you." Warren shrugged. "I had that power of attorney you signed before you deployed. The one for handling the bills. I used it. It is legal. It is done." "That was for utilities," I said. "That was so you could pay the water bill if I was in the field. It was not for selling my entire life." "You were gone," Warren said. He took a step down toward me aggressively. "You are always gone. You ran off to play soldier in Okinawa and left us here to rot. You abandoned this family. Maya, we had to survive. If you were here, maybe things would be different, but you were not here. You were thousands of miles away living on the government dime while your brother was drowning." The gaslighting was breathtaking. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He was blaming me for the theft of my own home because I was serving in the military. "So you sold it," I said. "Behind my back." "We saved Trent," Warren said. "And we made a little profit on top. The market in Ashford Ridge is hot right now. You should be happy. We kept the family afloat. I looked past them. I looked at the front door. That was when I saw the details. The small things that screamed that I was already a ghost in my own life. The brass lock set I had installed 2 years ago was gone. It had been replaced by a smart lock with a keypad. The welcome mat that said, "Leave your boots here," was gone. In its place was a generic beige mat with a floral border, and above the door frame was a blinking blue light, a ring camera. It was watching us. Someone else was already living there. This was not a pending sale. This was not a negotiation. Strangers were sleeping in my bedroom. Strangers were cooking on my stove. Strangers had my keys. Warren and Trent were watching me closely. They were waiting for the explosion. They wanted the tears. They wanted me to drop to my knees and scream and beg and ask them how they could do this to me. They wanted the drama because the drama made them feel powerful. It validated their narrative that I was just an emotional girl who did not understand the hard choices men had to make. Trent smirked. "Don't look so sad. Sis, you can crash on Dad's couch for a few days before you go back. It is not like you really lived here anyway." I looked at Trent. I looked at his smug face and his cheap shoes and the way he stood behind our father for protection, even though he was 35 years old. I felt the tears prick the corners of my eyes, but I willed them back. I swallowed the scream that was clawing its way up my throat. I took a deep breath of the Wyoming air. And then I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a razor blade smile. It was the smile of a soldier who just realized the enemy walked into a minefield and did not know it yet. The smirk fell off Trent's face. Warren lowered his beer can. They shifted their weight. They did not like the smile. It was not in the script. "You think you sold this house?" I said softly. "We did sell it," Warren said. His voice wavered slightly. "The papers are signed. The money is gone. Maya, you cannot undo it." "You used the power of attorney," I said. "Yes," Warren said. "It was broad. I checked. I had the right." I laughed. It was a short, dry sound. "You checked? Of course you did. You probably found some strip mall notary to stamp whatever you put in front of him." "It is legal," Trent insisted. "You cannot scare us." I looked at the camera above the door. I looked right into the lens. I wondered if the new owners were watching. I hope they were. "I am not trying to scare you," I said. "I am actually impressed. It takes a lot of confidence to sell something you do not own." "I told you," Warren shouted, losing his patience. "I had the power of attorney. I had the right." "You had a piece of paper," I said. "But you missed something. You missed the one thing I did 3 months ago when I started getting those weird feelings during our phone calls. The one thing I did when I realized you stopped asking how I was and started asking when I would be deploying again." "What are you talking about?" Warren asked. The ice in his voice was cracking. I gripped the handle of my suitcase. I did not need to go inside. I did not need to fight them on the porch. I had already won the war. They just had not heard the explosion yet. "The house you sold," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried on the wind. "The house you took money for and signed deeds for, that house actually—" I stopped. I let the sentence hang there like a guillotine blade that refused to drop. Warren took a step back. "Actually what?" Trent looked at Dad and then back at me. "What is she talking about? Is she crazy?" I widened my smile. "You better hope I am crazy, Trent, because if I am sane, then you two just committed a felony that is going to put you in a federal prison for a very long time." "You are bluffing," Warren said, but his eyes were darting around the yard now. He was looking for the trap. "Am I?" I asked. "Enjoy the money while you have it. You are going to need it for the lawyers." I turned around. I did not wait for their response. I walked back to my rental car. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I could feel their confusion turning into panic. They were expecting a victim. Instead, they got a ghost. I opened the car door and tossed my bag onto the passenger seat. I looked back at them one last time. They looked small standing there on the porch of a house that belonged to strangers. They looked like two men who had just realized they were standing on a trapdoor. To understand why I laughed, to understand why I drove away without shedding a single tear, and to understand the absolute hell I was about to rain down on my own flesh and blood, you have to understand what happened 3 months ago. You have to go back to Okinawa, to the first time the phone rang and I knew, deep in my gut, that my family had decided I was worth more to them dead or absent than I was alive and present. That was when the first crack appeared, and unlike them, I did not ignore it. I prepared for it. I started the engine and drove away from the house I loved, leaving my father and brother celebrating a victory that was actually their funeral. The war had started, and I had the high ground. Okinawa is not just an island. It is a pressure cooker wrapped in humidity so thick you have to chew the air before you can breathe it. For the last 2 years, my life had been measured in rigid blocks of time. 500 hours for physical training, 800 hours for equipment checks, 1,800 hours for chow, sleep, repeat. The Marine Corps does not leave much room for wandering thoughts, which is usually a blessing, but when the lights went out in the barracks and the only sound was the hum of the industrial air conditioning units fighting a losing battle against the Japanese summer, my mind always drifted to the same place. It went to Ashford Ridge. It went to the way the Wyoming sky looked at twilight, a bruised purple that stretched forever. It went to the smell of the pine floorboards in the hallway of my house. I did not just buy that house, I bled for it. I remembered the weekend I spent sanding the deck, my hands blistered and raw, refusing to wear gloves because I wanted to feel the wood smooth out under my palms. I remembered the exact spot on the back door frame where I had taken a pocket knife and carved the letters MC into the wood, right near the bottom hinge where nobody else would look. It was childish, maybe, but it was my way of branding it. That wood was mine. That dirt was mine. That house was the only thing in my life that did not belong to the government. It was my anchor. But 3 months ago, the anchor started to drag. It began with the silence. Usually, my father was a talker. Warren liked to hear the sound of his own voice, especially when he had a few beers in him. He would call me on Sundays, rambling about the neighbors or the weather or how the local football team was blowing the season. But in late April, the calls got short. They got weird. I would call him during my allotted personal time, usually around 7 in the evening Okinawa time, which was early morning back in Wyoming. He stopped answering on the first ring. When he did answer, he sounded breathless, like he had just run up the stairs or was trying to block a door. "Hey, Dad," I said during one of those calls. "Just checking in. How is the water heater? Did that pilot light stay lit?" "It is fine," Warren said. His voice was tight. "Everything is fine. Maya, listen, I cannot talk long. I am heading out." "At 6 in the morning?" I asked. "Where are you going at 6 in the morning? You are retired." "Just errands," he said. "Busy day." There was a click in the background. It was distinct. It was the sound of the front deadbolt turning. I knew that sound better than I knew my own heartbeat. It was a heavy, solid clunk that echoed in the entryway. "Who is there?" I asked. "Dad, are you opening the door for someone?" "No," he said too quickly. "Just the wind. The house settles. You know how it is." He hung up before I could say goodbye. I stared at my phone screen, frowning. The wind did not turn deadbolts. 2 weeks later, the anomaly escalated. I called on a Saturday. This time, Warren answered on the second ring, but he did not say hello immediately. He must have fumbled the phone because the line was open. But he was not speaking to me. He was speaking to someone else in the room. The voice that answered him was not his. It was deeper, rougher. It sounded like gravel crunching under a boot. "Did the wire hit yet?" the voice asked. Then I heard my father. "Not yet. Keep your voice down." "Dad?" I said loud and sharp. There was a frantic shuffling sound, like a hand being clamped over the receiver. Then silence. Then Warren's voice came back on, overly loud and fake cheerful. "Maya, hi. Sorry. Had the television on loud. Watching a movie." I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "What movie?" I asked. "Oh, just some Western," he stammered. "Listen, honey, now is not a good time. Trent is moving his stuff in." My stomach dropped. "Trent is moving in? Since when?" "Just for a bit. Warren said, rushing the words. He had some bad luck with his landlord. You know how it is. He just needs to get back on his feet, restart his life. Family helps family, right? I knew that phrase. Restart his life. It was the Callaway code for Trent gambled away his rent money again and needs a free place to crash until he burns that bridge too. Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. I told you, I do not want Trent staying there long term. He smokes inside. He leaves the door unlocked. My gear is in the garage. He will be careful, Warren promised. He has changed. Maya, really, he is helping me with maintenance. Maintenance. The word stuck in my ear like a burr. Trent had never fixed a thing in his life. The only thing my brother knew how to dismantle was a bank account. Who was that man? I asked. The one asking about a wire. I told you it was the TV, Warren said. You are imagining things. The connection is bad. I have to go help your brother with a box. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bunk, looking at the black screen of my phone. The air in the barracks felt suddenly colder. A wire? What wire? Trent did not have money to wire. Warren lived on a pension that barely covered his beer tab. That was the night I started the notebook. It was a small, black waterproof field journal. On page 1, I wrote the date and time, May 12th, 0600 Wyoming time. Male voice. Topic: wire transfer. Warren behavior. Evasive. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that being 6,000 miles away plays tricks on your mind. You start to fill in the gaps with your worst fears because you cannot see the reality. Maybe it really was the TV. Maybe Trent really was turning a new leaf. But the soldier in me knew better. The soldier in me knew that coincidences are just enemy movements you have not analyzed yet. A week later, I got the text message. I was in the mess hall, eating a breakfast of powdered eggs and lukewarm coffee. My phone buzzed on the table. It was from Warren. Call before you come home next time. Don't just show up. I stared at the words. They were not affectionate. They were instructions. I typed back, why? Is something wrong with the house? 3 dots appeared. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. No. The reply came. Just want to make sure the house is ready. Trent is messy. Don't want you to be stressed. I did not reply. I put the phone down and lost my appetite. Don't just show up. That was not a request for courtesy. That was a perimeter defense. They were establishing a buffer zone. They needed lead time. Lead time for what? The anxiety began to eat at my sleep. I would lie in my bunk, closing my eyes, trying to visualize my house to calm down, but the image was changing. In my head, I saw Trent's boots on my coffee table. I saw strange men walking through my kitchen. I saw my tools, my expensive organized socket sets in the garage, being pawned at a shop in the next town over. I thought about the legal papers before I deployed. I had signed a limited power of attorney for Warren. It was supposed to be simple. If a pipe burst and the plumber needed a check, Warren could sign. If the county needed a signature for brush clearing, Warren could handle it. It was a standard pre-deployment checklist item. Trust your next of kin. I trusted him. He was my dad. He was weak. Yes. He enabled Trent. Yes. But he had never stolen from me. Not directly. But people change when desperation enters the room, and that voice asking about a wire transfer sounded desperate. I tried to focus on my training. I ran harder. I shot tighter groups at the range, but the unease was a static noise in the back of my skull that would not go away. I felt like I was standing guard duty, but looking in the wrong direction. Then came the email. It was 3 days ago. I was sitting in the morale tent, using one of the shared computers to check my personal inbox. The internet connection was slow, loading page by page with agonizing lethargy. My inbox was full of the usual junk, promotions for tactical gear, spam about car warranties, a newsletter from the Veterans Association, and then one subject line that made the world stop. Sheridan County Clerk. Automated notification. Property record update. I froze. My hand hovered over the mouse. I had signed up for this service 2 years ago when I bought the place. It was a free fraud alert system offered by the county. I had completely forgotten about it. It was designed to send an email whenever a document was recorded against my parcel number. I clicked it. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that had nothing to do with physical exertion. The email was sparse, computer-generated text. Alert for parcel number 4920. A document has been recorded. Type: Deed of Conveyance. Date: July 14th. Status: Processing. Deed of Conveyance. I read the words again and again. That was not a utility bill. That was not a permit for fixing a fence. A deed of conveyance meant ownership was moving. It meant the title was changing hands. I looked at the date. July 14th. That was 2 days ago. I sat back in the plastic chair, the noise of the tent fading into a dull buzz. The soldiers around me were laughing, playing video games, video chatting with their wives. They were in their world. I was in a freefall. It was not paranoia. The voice asking about the wire, the evasion, the text telling me not to come home, it all snapped together into a picture so ugly I wanted to vomit. They were not just living in my house, they were selling it. They were stripping me for parts while I was serving my country. I did not scream. I did not throw the computer monitor. A cold, hard clarity washed over me. This was an ambush, and like any ambush, the only way to survive was to react instantly and with overwhelming force. I printed the email. I folded the paper until it was a small, sharp square and put it in my pocket. I logged out. I walked back to my barracks to pack. I did not call Warren. I did not text Trent. I did not ask for an explanation. You do not ask the enemy why they are shooting at you. You just return fire. I needed to get to Wyoming. I needed to see it with my own eyes. And I needed to make sure that by the time they realized I was coming, it would be too late for them to run. The flight home was 27 hours of silence. I sat in my seat, staring at the flight path map on the screen in front of me, watching the little plane icon inch across the Pacific Ocean. Every mile brought me closer to the betrayal. Every mile turned my sadness into something sharper, something useful. I was coming home, but I was not coming home to rest. I was coming home to war. The email on the screen was not just a notification, it was an autopsy report for my life back home. I stared at the pixelated text until my eyes burned. The subject line was generic, but the body of the message contained the bullet that killed my trust. It listed a transaction status as pending final recording. It listed the grantor as Maya Calloway, and it listed the grantee as a name that was partially redacted by the automated privacy filter, something starting with L and ending in Whitaker. I was not selling my house to anyone named Whitaker. I was not selling my house at all. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady. That was the training kicking in. When you take fire, you do not panic. You assess. I dialed Warren first. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I did not leave a message. I hung up and dialed Trent. His phone did not even ring. It went straight to an automated operator telling me the customer was unavailable. They were screening me. They knew the email system would trigger eventually. The silence was not an oversight. It was a confession. I did not waste time trying to call again. I grabbed my cover and walked straight out of the barracks. I marched across the base, past the mess hall, past the parade deck, all the way to Building 400, the legal assistance office. It was 1400 hours. The waiting room was empty. I walked up to the clerk, a young corporal who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I need to speak to a legal assistance attorney. I said, it is an emergency involving the Service Members Civil Relief Act and property theft. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from a captain named Reynolds. He was older, with gray at his temples, and eyes that had seen enough domestic disputes to last 10 lifetimes. He listened while I explained the situation. I told him about the house. I told him about the deployment. I told him about the power of attorney I had signed for my father. Do you have a copy of the POA? Captain Reynolds asked. I pulled the digital scan up on my phone and showed him. He put on his reading glasses and leaned in. He read it silently for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. It was the only sound in the room. "It is a general power of attorney," Reynolds said finally. He took off his glasses. "It is not limited to paying bills. Sergeant Calloway, the language here grants your father the authority to conduct real estate transactions, banking transactions, and asset liquidation on your behalf. It is broad, very broad." But I told him it was for utilities. I said, the anger was starting to boil in my stomach, hot and acidic. I told him it was just to keep the lights on. "Verbal instructions do not override written contracts," Reynolds said. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. "Legally, on the face of this document, he has the power to sign your name." "So he can just sell my house?" I asked. "He can just take everything I worked for?" Reynolds leaned forward. "There is a difference between having the power to sign and having the right to keep the proceeds," he said. "If he sells the house and keeps the money for himself, that is theft. That is a breach of fiduciary duty. But stopping the sale itself? That is harder once the ink is dry on the closing documents." He paused and looked me dead in the eye. "Trust is good. Sergeant," he said, "control is safe. You gave up control. Now we have to claw it back." I left his office with a list of instructions. Step 1 was information superiority. I went back to the computer lab. I did not go to the free morale computers this time. I went to the business center where the connection was secure and fast. I logged into the Sheridan County Clerk website. I paid the $20 rush fee to access the uncertified document images immediately. I entered my parcel number. The search results loaded. The list was longer than it should have been. There were 5 new entries in the last 10 days. I opened the first one. It was an intent to sell affidavit. At the bottom of the page, on the line marked seller signature, was my name. But it was not my handwriting. It was a shaky, looping scrawl that I recognized instantly. Beneath it, in smaller print, it read, "Warren Calloway, attorney in fact." Seeing my name written by his hand felt like a physical violation. I opened the next document. It was the sales contract. I scanned the pages, looking for the numbers. The sale price was $310,000. That was $20,000 under market value. They were not looking for a good deal. They were looking for a fast deal. And then I saw the name of the broker, Derek Harlan. I opened a new tab and searched for him. Derek Harlan Realty. The website was flashy, full of bold fonts and exclamation points. "We buy ugly houses, cash in hand, close in 7 days." He was a predator. He was the kind of guy who circled distressed properties and desperate people. Warren and Trent must have looked like a buffet to him. But the real smoking gun was in the third document. It was the preliminary closing disclosure. This was the form that detailed exactly where the money was going. I scrolled past the title fees. I scrolled past the prorated taxes. I got to the section marked Disbursements to Seller. Usually, this section lists one account, the owner's account. This document listed 2 wire transfers. Wire instruction number 1 was for $40,000. Destination: an account at First Wyoming Bank ending in 442. I knew that account. That was Warren's checking account, the one he used to buy his beer and pay for his cable television. Wire instruction number 2 was for the remainder of the net proceeds, nearly $150,000 after the mortgage was paid off. Destination: an account ending in 909. I did not recognize the number, but the beneficiary name was printed right there in black and white. Trent Calloway. I stopped breathing for a few seconds. There it was, the proof. They were not consolidating assets for the family. They were looting me. Warren was taking a cut, likely to soothe his conscience or pay off his own small debts. But Trent was taking the lion's share. My brother, who had never worked a hard day in his life, was about to receive a 6-figure deposit funded by my sweat and my risk. And the worst part? The closing date was listed as yesterday. The money had likely already moved. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. It was the same feeling I got before a live fire exercise. The fear vanishes, replaced by a checklist. I hit print. I printed every single page: the contract, the disclosure, the affidavit, the power of attorney scan. I took a red marker from my bag. I sat there in the quiet hum of the computer lab and I started highlighting. I highlighted the dates. I highlighted the signatures. I highlighted the wire instructions. I built a timeline. July 1st. Warren asks about the wire. July 5th. Trent moves in. July 10th. Contract signed with Derek Harlan. July 14th. Closing initiated. July 15th. Proceeds disbursed. They thought they had pulled off the perfect heist. They thought I was 6,000 miles away, stuck on an island, distracted by my duty. They thought they could send me an email later, claiming it was a foreclosure or a mistake, and I would be too far away to check the details. They forgot that planes fly in two directions. I opened a travel website. I found a flight leaving Naha Airport in 4 hours. It connected through Tokyo, then Seattle, then down to Wyoming. The ticket cost me $2,000. It was an exorbitant price for a last-minute booking. I paid it without blinking. I did not text Warren. I did not email Trent. I did not alert the neighbors. If I told them I was coming, they would have time to prepare. They would have time to move the money again. They would have time to come up with a story or hide the evidence. I wanted them to think they were safe. I wanted them to spend the next 24 hours celebrating their victory. I wanted them to open the champagne. I wanted Trent to look at his bank balance and feel like a king. Because the higher they climbed, the harder the fall would be when I kicked the ladder out from under them. I gathered the stack of warm paper from the printer tray. It was a thick bundle. It weighed less than a pound, but it was heavy enough to crush my entire family. I put the papers in my waterproof folder. I walked back to the barracks to pack my bag. I moved efficiently. Uniforms, civilian clothes, toiletries, and the folder. The email notification on my phone blinked again. Another automated update. Transaction recording complete. I looked at the screen and whispered to the empty room. It is not complete. It is just beginning. The cabin of the Boeing 737 was dark, save for the faint blue glow of the reading light above my tray table. Most of the passengers around me were asleep, their heads lolling against the windows or slumped onto neck pillows. We were somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, suspended in that strange, timeless void between departure and arrival. I was not sleeping. I could not afford to sleep. My laptop was open in front of me. The battery icon was flashing red, warning me that I had less than 10% power remaining. It was enough. I did not need hours, I just needed clarity. For the first few hours of the flight, I had felt a physical urge to violence. It was a raw, visceral thing, the kind of anger that makes your hands shake and your jaw ache from clenching. I imagined kicking down the front door of my father's rental. I imagined grabbing Trent by his collar and throwing him against a wall until he admitted what he had done. I imagined screaming until my voice gave out, unleashing 2 years of loneliness and betrayal right into their faces. But somewhere over the ocean, the Marine in me took over. Rage is a fuel, but it is a dirty fuel. It burns hot, and it burns fast, and it leaves you exhausted. If I went home screaming, I would just be the hysterical daughter. I would be the emotional woman that Warren and Trent could dismiss. They would tell the neighbors I was having a breakdown. They would call the police and say I was threatening them. They would spin the narrative until I was the villain and they were the victims trying to manage me. I could not let that happen. I closed my eyes for a second and took a deep breath. When I opened them, I made a decision. I was not going back to Ashford Ridge to fight. I was going back to dismantle. I opened a blank document and typed a header. Mission objectives. I typed 3 lines. 1. Secure the asset. Restore legal title to the property at 4920 Juniper Lane. 2. Mitigate collateral damage. Determine the status of the third-party buyer. If they are innocent, ensure they are not destroyed by my family's fraud. 3. Neutralize the threat. Expose Derek Harlan and anyone else involved in the financial chain. I looked at the second point, the buyer. The name on the email was Whitaker. I did not know who they were. They could be part of the scam. A friend of Derek's planted to launder the title, or they could be a young couple who just wanted a home. Someone who had put their life savings into a house they thought was legitimate. If they were innocent, they were about to walk into a buzzsaw. I had to be careful. I could not just blow up the house. I had to defuse the bomb while they were still inside it. I switched windows to my email draft. I had found the name of a firm before I left Okinawa. Northbridge Legal Group. They were not the cheapest lawyers in the county, but they had a reputation for being aggressive with property disputes. I typed the email. To Senior Partner, Northbridge Legal Group. Subject, Urgent, Fraudulent Conveyance and Unauthorized Sale of Property. Dear Sir or Madam, I am currently deployed overseas but am returning to the United States immediately. It has come to my attention that my primary residence has been sold without my consent via an abused power of attorney. The transaction closed 48 hours ago. I possess documentation proving the sale was conducted under false pretenses and with the intent to defraud. I require immediate representation to file a lis pendens and freeze the proceeds. I saved the draft. I would hit send the moment my phone connected to the American cellular network. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing our initial descent. I shut the laptop. My plan required isolation. I could not stay with my father. If I slept under his roof, even for one night, I would be compromised. He would cry. He would talk about Mom. He would make me coffee and reminisce about when I was little, trying to soften me up, trying to blur the lines between crime and family mistake. I needed a base of operations that was sterile. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down the name of a place I remembered. The Blue Bison Motel. It was on the outskirts of town, near the interstate. It was cheap. The carpet smelled like stale tobacco, and the walls were thin, but it was neutral ground. It was a place where I could spread my papers out on the bed and think without anyone asking me if I was hungry. I spent the last 20 minutes of the flight analyzing the enemy's position. I replayed the documents I had printed in Okinawa in my mind, looking for the cracks. The transaction had moved too fast. 7 days from contract to close is not normal residential speed. It is panic speed. It means no inspections, no title search, no due diligence. Why did the title company not flag it? A power of attorney used for a 6-figure transaction usually triggers a verification call. Hello, Ms. Calloway. We have your father here selling your house. Can you confirm this is correct? That call never happened. That meant Derek Harlan had found a title officer who was either incompetent or on his payroll. Or, more likely, they had used a mobile notary who didn't ask questions and then filed the papers directly with the county, bypassing the usual safeguards. They had been sloppy. Arrogance makes people sloppy. Warren and Trent assumed that because they were my family, they had a moral right to my assets. They assumed that the law would see it as a domestic dispute rather than grand larceny. They were wrong. But there was one more thing, one detail they did not know, one card I was holding that I had not even told the legal assistance captain about. I leaned my head back against the seat and let a small, cold smile touch my lips. Before I deployed to Okinawa, 2 years ago, I had a drink with an old friend from high school who had just passed the bar exam. We were talking about risks, about the uncertainty of military life. She had given me some advice. Powers of attorney are great, she had said, but they are dangerous. If you want to be bulletproof, you need a fail-safe. So I had signed one more document. I had paid the filing fee. I had mailed it to a specific office in the state capital, not the local county clerk. Warren did not know about it. Trent certainly did not know about it. And because they had used a cheap, fast-track title search, Derek Harlan had missed it too. I decided right then that I would not reveal it. Not yet. If I told them now, they would panic and try to cover their tracks. They might destroy evidence or hide the money in offshore crypto accounts where I could never reach it. No, I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think the sale was done. The deed was transferred, and the only thing they had to deal with was an angry daughter. I needed them to stand on that porch and tell me to my face that I was powerless. Because the higher their confidence, the more devastating the truth would be when I finally laid it on the table. The plane wheels touched the tarmac with a screech of rubber, The cabin lights flooded on. I turned on my phone. It vibrated instantly, then again, and again, a continuous buzz that lasted for nearly a full minute. 17 missed calls from Dad, 12 missed calls from Trent, 6 text messages. I scrolled through them without opening them. Maya, pick up. Where are you? We need to talk before you do anything stupid. Don't listen to strangers. Trent is really sorry. We can fix this. Panic. Pure, distilled panic. They had seen the email notification too, or maybe the bank had flagged the transfer. Either way, they knew the ghost was coming home. I did not reply. I silenced the phone and put it in my pocket. Every minute of my silence would amplify their fear. Silence is a weapon. It forces the enemy to imagine the worst. I rented a car at the airport, a gray sedan. Nondescript. I drove south toward Ashford Ridge. The landscape was familiar. The rolling plains, the distant peaks of the Bighorn Mountains. But it looked different to me now. It did not look like home. It looked like a crime scene. I drove straight to the Blue Bison Motel. I checked in under my middle name. I paid cash. The room was exactly as I expected. Beige, dim, and smelling of lemon disinfectant masking something older. I threw my bag on the bed. I went into the bathroom and turned on the tap, splashing cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed from fatigue. My skin was pale. I looked like a victim. "Stop it," I whispered. I stood up straighter. I squared my shoulders. I looked into my own pupils. I rehearsed the line I would use when they tried to guilt me. I said it out loud to the empty room, testing the weight of the words. "I am not here to have a family discussion," I said. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again, louder, colder. "I am not here for emotional revenge. I am here to repair a legal error. I am not your daughter right now. I am the plaintiff. I am not here to cry. I am here to collect." I practiced until the tremor was gone from my voice. I practiced until I sounded like a machine. I checked my watch. It was late afternoon. The sun would be setting soon. I walked out to the rental car. I needed to do one reconnaissance pass. I drove to Juniper Lane. I kept my speed slow, blending in with the suburban traffic. I turned the corner and saw it. My house. There were 2 cars in the driveway. One was Warren's rusted pickup truck. The other was a flashy sports car I didn't recognize. Probably Trent's new toy, bought with my money. And there was a third car parked on the street, a sensible station wagon, the buyer's car. I saw movement in the window. I saw shadows moving across the living room where I used to watch movies on rainy nights. I wanted to stop. I wanted to storm up the driveway and scream until the windows shattered. My foot hovered over the brake. "Discipline," I told myself. "Hold the line." I drove past. I did not slow down. I did not look back. I had seen enough. The enemy was in position. They were comfortable. They were digging in. I drove back to the motel, opened my laptop, and sent the email to Northbridge Legal Group. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for morning. I was not crying. I was calibrating. Tomorrow, I would walk onto that porch, and I would not bring a weapon. I would bring the truth. And for men like Warren and Trent, the truth was far more dangerous than a gun. The next morning, the sun was shining on Ashford Ridge as if nothing had happened. The sky was a cruel, brilliant blue. It was the kind of day that belonged on a postcard, not in a criminal investigation. I pulled my rental car up to the curb, but I did not park in the driveway this time. That space was occupied. The station wagon I had seen the night before was still there. It looked lived in. There were bumper stickers on the back window, one for a local animal shelter, another for a marathon runner. Inside, I could see a child's car seat in the back. My stomach twisted. This was not just a financial transaction. This was a family. I walked up the path. I did not run. I did not stomp. My boots hit the concrete with a rhythmic, measured cadence. Left, right, left, right. The front door opened before I even reached the steps. It was not Warren. It was not Trent. A woman stepped out. She looked to be about my age, maybe a few years older. She was wearing a faded university sweatshirt and holding a ceramic mug of coffee. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. The universal hairstyle of a woman who is trying to get a house in order. She looked tired, but happy. She looked like she belonged there. She stopped when she saw me. She hesitated, her hand tightening on the handle of the mug. She did not look scared, just confused. She looked at me, then at the rental car, then back at me. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was polite, neighborly. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I was looking for malice. I was looking for a co-conspirator. But all I saw was a woman enjoying her morning coffee on a porch she thought she owned. "My name is Maya Calloway," I said. Recognition flashed in her eyes, not fear, but realization. "Oh, you are the daughter. Warren mentioned you might stop by." "Did he?" I asked. "He said you were deployed," she said, taking a sip of her coffee. She seemed to relax a little. "Welcome home. I am Lena Whitaker." She extended a hand. She was trying to be nice. She was trying to be the gracious host. I did not shake her hand. I could not. If I touched her, the reality of what I had to do would shatter my resolve. I had to destroy this woman's peace to save my own life. "Lena," I said, "we need to talk." Before she could answer, the screen door banged open behind her. Warren stepped out. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were puffy and he was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. When he saw me, his face went slack with panic. "Maya," he said, his voice too loud, too jovial. "You are back. I told you we could meet for lunch later. Why don't you go to the diner in town? Trent and I will meet you there in an hour." He was trying to herd me away. He was trying to get the wolf off the porch before the sheep realized she was in danger. "I am not going to the diner. Dad," I said. I kept my eyes on Lena. "I am here to speak with the current occupant." "She is just sensitive," Warren said to Lena, laughing nervously. He stepped between us, acting as a human shield. "You know how it is, coming back from the service, the adjustment period. She is a little confused about the timeline." Lena looked at Warren, then at me. The smile was fading from her face. She sensed the tension now. It was vibrating in the air like a high-tension wire. "I am not confused," I said. I spoke clearly. I spoke calmly. "Lena, I have a question for you." "Maya, stop it." Trent appeared in the doorway now, hovering behind Warren. He looked hungover. He looked mean. "Go away. You are trespassing." "I asked a question," I said, ignoring my brother completely. "Lena, who handled the closing for this house?" Lena frowned. She lowered her coffee mug. "What do you mean?" "The sale," I said. "Who was the title officer? Who was your attorney?" "We didn't use attorneys," Lena said. She looked at Warren for reassurance, but Warren was staring at his shoes. "It was a direct sale, to save on closing costs. Mr. Harlan handled it." "Derek Harlan," I said. "Yes," Lena said. "He is a friend of your father. He said it was a family transaction. He said it would be faster this way. We closed in 5 days. It was a miracle, honestly. The market is so crazy right now. I was lucky to get it." "A miracle," I repeated. "Look, what is this about?" Lena asked. Her voice was sharpening. The neighborly warmth was gone. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "If a transaction happens in 5 days without a title search and without a buyer's attorney," I said, "it is not a miracle. It is a red flag the size of a billboard." "Maya," Warren shouted, "that is enough. You are scaring her." "She should be scared," I said. "She is standing in a crime scene." Trent rushed forward, pushing past Warren. He came down 2 steps. He was trying to use his physical size to intimidate me. "Shut your mouth. You are just jealous because you didn't get the cash. We sold it fair and square." I looked at Trent. I looked at the way his hands were shaking. He was terrified. He was not terrified of me hitting him. He was terrified of me talking. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that I was not reacting according to the script. I was supposed to be the hysterical sister he could dismiss. Instead, I was standing there like an auditor. "Lena," I said, shifting my gaze back to her, "I am going to tell you something that my father and brother are too cowardly to tell you, and I need you to listen very carefully." "I don't want to listen," Lena said. She took a step back toward the door. "I think you should leave." "This house is not legally yours," I said. The words hung in the air. The birds were singing in the trees. A car drove by on the street, but on the porch, time stopped. "Excuse me?" Lena whispered. "The deed was transferred using a power of attorney that was fraudulently obtained and abused," I said. "I did not consent to this sale. I was not informed of this sale. And the money that you paid? It did not go to me. It went to pay off my brother's gambling debts." "Liar!" Trent screamed. "She is lying. She is crazy. She has PTSD. "I have the bank records." "Trent," I said. I did not shout. I dropped my voice lower. "I have the wire transfer receipts. I have the emails. I have the timestamps." I reached into my bag. Warren flinched, as if he thought I was pulling out a weapon. I pulled out a manila envelope. I walked up the steps. Warren tried to block me, but I stepped around him. I held the envelope out to Lena. "What is this?" she asked. Her hand was trembling as she reached for it. "That is a copy of the original deed," I said. "A copy of the power of attorney, and a copy of the email I sent to my lawyer this morning filing a dispute against the title." Lena took the envelope. She stared at it as if it were radioactive. "I am not your enemy." "Lena," I said, "I think you are a victim. I think Derek Harlan saw a woman he could rush, and a family he could manipulate. But you need to understand something. This is going to court, and when it goes to court, that piece of paper you signed with Derek Harlan is not going to protect you." "But we moved in," Lena said. Her voice broke. "We have boxes in the hallway. My daughter's room is painted." My heart cracked a little. I thought of the paint I had put on those walls. I thought of the memories I wanted to make there, but I could not set myself on fire to keep her warm. "I am sorry," I said. "Truly, but you need to call a lawyer, a real one. Today, right now. Do not talk to Derek Harlan. Do not talk to my father, and for the love of God, do not talk to my brother." "This is a family matter," Warren pleaded. He grabbed my arm. His grip was weak, clammy. "Maya, please, we can work this out. We can pay you back. Just give us time. Don't drag her into this." I pulled my arm away. I dusted off the sleeve of my jacket where he had touched me. "You are right, Dad," I said. It was a family matter. I looked at the smart lock on the door. I looked at the camera. I looked at the strangers occupying my sanctuary. "It was a family matter when you decided to sell my home behind my back," I said. "But the moment you forged my intent and took that money, you made it a legal matter. You crossed the line from father to felon." I turned back to Lena. She was clutching the envelope to her chest, her face pale. "Read the papers, Lena," I said, "and then ask yourself why they were in such a hurry." I turned around and walked down the steps. "Maya," Trent yelled after me, "you are ruining everything. You are selfish. You always were." I did not look back. I got into my rental car. I started the engine. I could see them in the rearview mirror as I drove away. Warren was slumped against the railing, his head in his hands. Trent was pacing, kicking at a flower pot, and Lena was standing perfectly still, staring at the envelope in her hands. The silence I left behind was heavy. It was the silence of a structure that had just lost its load-bearing wall. They were waiting for the collapse. And I was just getting started. The fluorescent lights of the Sheridan County Sheriff's Department hummed with a sound that was almost identical to the lights in the barracks back in Okinawa. It was a low, insect-like buzz that burrowed into your skull if you listened too long. I sat at a metal table in an interview room that smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I had been there for 40 minutes. I was not in handcuffs. I was the one who had walked in the front door, asked for the fraud division, and placed a 3-inch binder of evidence on the counter. The door opened and a man walked in. He was in his 50s. wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt and a tie that looked like it had been tied in the dark. He carried a fresh mug of coffee and my binder under his arm. "Ms. Calloway," he said. He pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down with a heavy sigh. "I am Lieutenant Evan Mercer, Financial Crimes." "Lieutenant," I said. I sat with my back straight, hands clasped on the table. Mercer opened the binder. He flipped through the pages I had highlighted on the plane, the wire transfer receipts, the power of attorney, the unauthorized deed. He stopped at the page where I had circled the broker's name. "Derek Harlan," Mercer said. He looked up at me. His eyes, which had been tired and glazed over a moment ago, were now sharp. "You said Harlan handled the closing?" "Yes, sir," I said. "He acted as the broker and facilitated the title work through a mobile notary service." Mercer let out a short, dry chuckle. It was not a happy sound. "Derek Harlan. That name has been drifting across my desk like a bad smell for 6 months. We have had noise complaints, zoning issues, and 2 civil disputes regarding earnest money deposits. But this," he tapped the binder, "this is different." "How different?" I asked. "This is not just a civil dispute about a bad contract," Mercer said. "You are active duty military. You were deployed OCONUS, outside the continental United States, when this transaction occurred. Did you receive any counseling regarding the Service Members Civil Relief Act?" "I know the act, sir. I know my rights." "Then you know that what happened here constitutes a federal violation," Mercer said. "Using a power of attorney to liquidate the primary residence of a deployed service member without express current consent and diverting the funds to a third party? That moves this out of bad family business and into felony fraud territory." He leaned back in his chair. "If we open this, Ms. Calloway, it becomes a criminal investigation. The state will be the plaintiff. You are the victim. But you lose the ability to just drop it if you change your mind later. Once the machine starts, it does not stop for Thanksgiving dinner." He was testing me. He wanted to know if I was going to get cold feet when I realized I was putting my father and brother in handcuffs. "I understand the chain of command, Lieutenant," I said. "And I understand the consequences. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to file a report." Mercer nodded. He pulled a standard statement form from his file. "Start from the beginning, dates, times, specific conversations. Do not editorialize. I do not want to hear how it made you feel. I want to know what they did." I took the pen. I wrote for an hour. I stripped the emotion out of my sentences. I did not write about the betrayal or the heartbreak. I wrote about the phone call on May 12th. I wrote about the email on July 14th. I wrote about the confrontation on the porch. I listed the amounts. $310,000 gross sale price, $40,000 wired to Warren Calloway, $150,000 wired to Trent Calloway. It was an autopsy of my family, written in blue ink. When I finished, Mercer reviewed the statement. "We got a call about an hour ago," Mercer said quietly, "from a woman named Lena Whitaker." My pen stopped moving. "She called you?" "She was panicked," Mercer said. "She said a woman showed up at her house claiming to be the owner. She wanted to know if she was being scammed. We told her to come in." "She is a victim too, Lieutenant," I said. "They rushed her. They told her it was a family deal to bypass the inspections." "That matches what she told the desk sergeant," Mercer said. "She said Harlan told her that you were unreachable and that the sale had to happen immediately to cover medical bills for your father. That was the pitch." "Medical bills?" I felt a surge of cold anger. "My father has full veteran benefits. He does not pay a dime for medical." "Lies build on lies," Mercer said. "He told her a sob story to get her to sign without a lawyer. Classic emotional manipulation." Mercer stood up. He picked up the binder. "I am going to assign a case number, 09422 Alpha. Write that down. I am going to issue subpoenas for the bank records of your father and brother to confirm the wire destinations. And I am going to have a conversation with Mr. Harlan." He walked to the door, then paused. "Ms. Calloway, are you sure about this? I have seen families destroy each other over less money than this, but usually, they do it in civil court. Sending your dad to prison? That is a bell you cannot unring. I looked at the empty metal table. I thought about the text message telling me not to come home. I thought about Trent's new car. I did not put them in this room, Lieutenant, I said. They walked in here the moment they signed my name. I am just turning on the lights. Mercer nodded once, grimly, and left the room. I walked out of the station into the bright afternoon sun. The air felt thinner, sharper. My phone, which I had silenced while inside, began to vibrate against my thigh. It had been vibrating intermittently for 2 hours. I pulled it out. The screen was full of notifications. Warren. Maya, please. I am at the diner. Just come talk to me. We can fix this. I still have some of the money. We can work out a payment plan. Warren. Don't go to the cops. Please. Think about your mother. She would not want this. I felt a flash of nausea at the mention of my mother. She was the one who left me the money for the down payment. She was the one who taught me that a home was a sanctuary. Using her name to cover his theft was a new low. Then came the texts from Trent. Trent, you think you are so smart? You are ruining my life. I finally got things on track. Trent, if you report this, I will tell everyone you are unstable. I will tell them you threatened Dad. Trent, answer the phone, you bitch. I did not reply. I did not delete them. I opened a folder on my phone labeled Evidence and moved every screenshot into it. Every threat was another nail in their coffin. Every plea was an admission of guilt. I got into my rental car and drove back to the Blue Bison Motel. I stopped at a drive-thru for a burger, but I could not eat it. I just drank the black coffee. Back in the room, I spread the documents out on the bedspread again. The streetlights from the parking lot cast long, orange shadows across the paperwork. I was looking for the weak link. Mercer had said Harlan was slippery. He had avoided charges before. That meant he knew how to walk the line between unethical and illegal. He knew how to hide in the gray areas. I picked up the Affidavit of Identity. This was a standard form where the seller confirms they are who they say they are. It requires a notary to verify a government ID. I looked at the signature. It was my name, signed by Warren as POA. Then I looked at the notary stamp. It was a smudge, illegible. But that was not what made my blood run cold. I flipped to the next page. In a standard closing packet for a power of attorney transaction, there is a specific document called the Alive and Well Affidavit. It is a document where the attorney-in-fact, Warren, swears that the principal, me, is currently alive, not revoke the power, and crucially, is aware of the transaction. I looked through the stack. The page numbers at the bottom of the closing packet were sequential. Page 14, page 15, page 17. I blinked. I looked again. Page 14, the deed. Page 15, the tax form. Page 17, the settlement statement. Page 16 was missing. I grabbed the original PDF I had downloaded from the county site. I scrolled down. The county record skipped from image 14 to image 16. There was no page 16. Derek Harlan had not just forgotten it, he had removed it. Why? Because that page, the Alive and Well Affidavit, requires a specific declaration that the principal has been contacted within 24 hours of closing. It requires a phone number or email verification. If Warren had signed that, he would have been committing perjury. If he didn't sign it, the title company should never have closed the deal. So they just removed the page. They deleted the safety check. This was not just fraud. This was conspiracy. They had altered the closing packet to hide the fact that they never verified my consent. I sat back on the bed, my heart pounding in my ears. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof that Derek Harlan was not just a sloppy broker, he was an active participant in the theft. He knew the POA was shaky. He knew I was deployed, so he simply deleted the one form that would have stopped the sale. I picked up my phone. It was 11 at night. I dialed the number for Lieutenant Mercer's direct line, which he had written on his card. It went to voicemail. "Lieutenant," I said. This is Maya Calloway. I found something. Check the closing packet page numbers. Page 16 is missing. It is the verification affidavit. They didn't just ignore the rules. They erased the evidence that they broke them. I hung up. Outside. A siren wailed in the distance. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty parking lot. I was alone in a cheap motel room, fighting a war against my own blood. But for the first time since I landed, I did not feel tired. I felt dangerous. They had removed page 16 to silence me, but they had forgotten one thing about missing pages. The gap tells a louder story than the words ever could. The meeting did not take place in a courtroom. It did not take place in an interrogation room with a two-way mirror. It took place on the front lawn of the house that legally belonged to me, but currently housed the furniture of the woman standing opposite me. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The sprinklers had just turned off, leaving the air smelling of wet concrete and cut grass. It was a wholesome, suburban smell that clashed violently with the reason we were all standing there. The cast of characters was assembled. On the left, near the driveway, stood Warren and Trent. My father was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight around the middle, trying to look respectable. Trent was wearing sunglasses, refusing to make eye contact with anyone, his jaw working furiously as he chewed on a piece of gum. On the right stood Lena Whitaker. She looked smaller than she had yesterday. Beside her was a man in a sharp gray suit, her attorney, Mr. Sterling. He held a briefcase like it was a weapon system. And in the middle, leaning against his unmarked sedan parked on the street, was Lieutenant Mercer. He was not officially conducting a raid. He was just observing, but the badge clipped to his belt was visible enough to make Warren sweat. I stood alone. I was the pivot point. "Let us get started," Mr. Sterling said. His voice was dry and cut through the ambient noise of the neighborhood. "My client, Ms. Whitaker, purchased this property in good faith. However, in light of the documents provided by Ms. Calloway yesterday, we have reviewed the transaction file." Sterling opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He did not look at me. He looked straight at Warren. "Mr. Calloway," Sterling said, "you acted as the attorney-in-fact for this sale. Is that correct?" "Yes," Warren said. He cleared his throat. "I have the power of attorney. It is all legal." "We will get to the legality in a moment," Sterling said. "I want to talk about the timeline. The contract was dated July 10th. The closing was July 15th. That is a 5-day escrow period. In my 30 years of practicing real estate law, I have never seen a residential deal close in 5 days without a significant amount of corner cutting." "We just wanted to get it done," Trent spoke up. His voice was aggressive, defensive. "The buyer wanted the house. We gave it to her. What is the problem?" Sterling turned his gaze to Trent. It was a look of pure disdain. "The problem, Mr. Calloway, is that speed is the enemy of due diligence. In your haste, you, or your broker, Mr. Harlan, bypassed the standard title search. You bypassed the mandatory waiting period for disclosures, and most importantly, you bypassed the verification of the principal." Sterling took a step forward. "The alive and well affidavit is missing from the final packet. The page is simply gone. That document is required to certify that the owner, Maya, was aware of the sale at the exact moment of closing." Warren shifted his weight. He looked at the ground. I must have misplaced it. There was a lot of paperwork." "You did not misplace it," I said. My voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. "You threw it away because you could not sign it without committing perjury." "Mr. Calloway," Sterling pressed, ignoring my interruption, "I am going to ask you a direct question, and I remind you that a police officer is standing 10 feet away. Did you call your daughter, Maya Calloway, and verbally confirm that she wanted to sell this house before you signed the deed?" The silence that followed was heavy. It felt physical. A crow cawed from the telephone wire above us. A car drove past slowly, the driver craning their neck to look at the gathering on the lawn. Warren opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at Trent. He looked at Lena, whose eyes were wide and pleading. She wanted him to say yes. She wanted to believe she hadn't been tricked. Warren started. I assumed she would be okay with it. She wasn't using the house. That is not the question, Sterling snapped. Did you call her? Yes or no? Warren looked at me. His eyes were watery. No. The word hung there. Lena let out a small, strangled sound. She put her hand over her mouth. So, Sterling said, closing his folder with a sharp snap, you executed a deed without the authorization of the owner. You utilized a power of attorney that was likely invalid due to the lack of concurrent consent. Gentlemen, this is not a sale. This is a void transaction. My client does not own this house. She owns a piece of paper sold to her by a fraudster. It is not fraud, Trent yelled. He took off his sunglasses. His eyes were wild. It is family business. We needed the money. Maya wasn't using it. She has a paycheck from the army. She doesn't have expenses. Trent, shut up, Warren hissed. No, Trent shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at me. She is the selfish one. She is hoarding this place while I have guys threatening to break my legs. You know where that money went? It didn't go to buy a yacht. It went to pay off the debts. The admission landed like a grenade. Mercer, who had been leaning casually against the car, straightened up. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket and wrote something down. Trent realized what he had said. His face went pale. He looked at Mercer, then back at Warren. Debts. You know, bills, medical bills. You said guys were threatening to break your legs, Sterling noted coldly. That does not sound like a hospital billing department. Lena stepped forward. Her shock was turning into terror. Wait, the money. The $310,000? Where is it? She looked at Warren. Mr. Calloway, where is the money I wired? If the sale is void, you just give it back, right? We undo this? Warren looked sick. He rubbed his face with his hand. It is tied up. Investments. We can't just access it right this second. Investments? I asked. You mean the bookie? Or did you mean the $40,000 you kept for yourself? Dad, is that sitting in your checking account? Or did you already spend it on a new truck? It is gone, Trent whispered. The fight drained out of him. Most of it, I had to pay them. They were going to hurt me. Lena let out a sob. It was a raw, ugly sound. That was my inheritance, she cried. That was my mother's life insurance money. I put everything into this house. You told me it was safe. You told me you were helping your daughter. We were, Warren pleaded. We were going to pay her back, eventually. Once Trent got on his feet, we were going to make it right. Ponzi schemes always start with the intention to pay it back, Mercer said from the street. His voice was calm, authoritative. But they never do. Sterling turned to Mercer. Lieutenant, where is the broker? Derek Harlan. He is the one who facilitated this. He has a fiduciary duty. His errors and omissions insurance should cover this. Mercer shook his head slowly. I sent a unit to Harlan's office this morning. The lights are off. The sign is gone from the door. The landlord says he cleared out over the weekend. Phone is disconnected. He ran, I said. He took his commission and he ran. He knew this was going to blow up the moment I landed. Lena looked like she was going to faint. Her knees buckled, and Sterling had to grab her elbow to steady her. I have lost everything, she whispered. I have no house. I have no money. I am homeless. She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but not anger anymore, just despair. You are going to kick us out, today, aren't you? I looked at her. I looked at the station wagon with the child seat. I looked at the house that I loved, the house that was my sanctuary. Then I looked at Warren and Trent. They were watching me, waiting for me to be the villain. They wanted me to be the heartless soldier who threw a mother and child onto the street so they could point a finger and say, see, she is the monster, not us. I took a deep breath. Miss Sterling, I said. The lawyer looked at me. Yes, Ms. Calloway? I am filing a lis pendens to freeze the title, I said, And I am pressing charges against my father and brother for theft and fraud. That is happening. There is no stopping that." Warren flinched. "However," I continued, keeping my eyes on Lena, "I am not moving for an immediate eviction. I am not going to throw Ms. Whitaker out today or tomorrow." Lena blinked, tears streaming down her face. "What?" "If we work together," I said, "we can go after the title insurance company. Derek Harlan was a licensed broker. The title agency he used was bonded. If we prove fraud, which we just did, the insurance policy has to pay out. It will take time. It will be messy. But it is the only way you get your money back." I stepped closer to her. "I will let you stay in the house as a tenant, rent-free, until the insurance claim is settled. But in exchange, I need you to do one thing." "Anything," Lena choked out. "I will do anything." "I need your testimony," I said. "I need you to tell the grand jury exactly what my father told you. I need you to testify that they lied to you about my consent." Lena nodded vigorously. "I will. I promise." "Maya," Warren said. His voice was trembling. He walked toward me, hands out, palms up. "Maya, please, think about what you are doing. Grand jury? That means prison. You are talking about sending your own father to prison." "You sent yourself to prison, Dad," I said. "I am just filling out the paperwork." "We can fix this internally," Warren begged. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Don't shame us in front of the town. Don't let strangers see us like this. We are family. You take the hit. Let Lena stay. And we pay you back over time. 10 years, 20 years, whatever it takes. Just keep it in the house." He reached out to touch my shoulder. I did not recoil. I stood my ground. I looked at his hand. The hand that had held mine when I was a child. The hand that had signed my name to sell my life away. "You want to keep it in the house?" I asked. "Yes," Warren said, hope sparking in his eyes. "Yes, family solves family problems." "You are right," I said, "but you forgot one thing." I pointed to the front door. "That is not your house anymore. You sold it, remember?" Warren's face crumbled. "And as for family," I said, my voice hard as granite, "family protects each other. Family does not cannibalize its own children to pay for a gambling addiction." "Maya?" "Stop," I said. "Family is not a rug to hide trash under." I realized I had thought the phrase in Vietnamese, something I picked up from a friend in Okinawa, but the English words came out just as sharp. Family is not a rug you sweep your trash under and pretend it is clean. You burned the rug. Dad, now you have to stand on the ashes. I turned to Lieutenant Mercer. "Lieutenant," I said, "I think you have enough for the probable cause affidavit." Mercer nodded. He pushed himself off the car. He walked toward Warren and Trent. He reached for the handcuffs on his belt. "Warren Calloway, Trent Calloway," Mercer said, his voice dropping into the official cadence of the law. "I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your backs." Trent tried to bolt. It was a pathetic attempt. He took 2 steps toward the side yard before he tripped over his own feet and Mercer grabbed him by the collar. Warren didn't move. He just stared at me, his eyes wide with shock, as if he still couldn't believe his little girl was actually letting this happen. I watched them get cuffed. I watched them get put into the back of the unmarked car. I watched Lena crying in relief and horror in the arms of her lawyer. I did not feel happy. I did not feel triumphant. I felt like I had just cut off a gangrenous limb. It hurt. It hurt like hell. But I knew that if I hadn't done it, the rot would have killed me. I looked at the house one last time. It was still standing. The foundation was solid. The people who tried to destroy it were gone. Now, only the cleanup remained. The interrogation room felt smaller now. The air was recycled and stale, heavy with the scent of cheap coffee and desperation. Warren and Trent were sitting on one side of the metal table, their hands cuffed to the bar running along the floor. Lieutenant Mercer stood by the door, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Lena Whitaker sat in the corner, clutching a tissue, looking like she had aged 10 years in 10 hours. We have an update on Mr. Harlan, Mercer said. His voice was flat, devoid of sympathy. State troopers found his car at the airport in Billings. He bought a one-way ticket to Mexico City 3 hours after you landed. Ms. Calloway, he is gone. Warren jerked his head up. See? He shouted, though his voice cracked. I told you. It was him. He manipulated us. He told me it was all legal. I am a victim here too. Maya. He took his commission and ran. He took 6%, I said calmly. I was sitting opposite them, my posture rigid. You took the rest. Do not pretend you are the victim. Dad, the bank records do not lie. The money hit your account, and 48 hours later, it was gone. You spent it. I was paying debts, Trent yelled. He strained against the cuffs. I was saving our lives. You were paying for your mistakes with my equity, I corrected him. But here's the thing about Derek Harlan running away. It actually helps me, because it proves that this wasn't just a family misunderstanding. It was a criminal enterprise, and you two were his willing partners. We didn't know he was a crook, Warren pleaded. He looked at Lena. Ms. Whitaker, you believe me, right? I thought he was a legitimate broker. I thought I had the right to sign. Lena looked away. She did not answer him. You thought you had the right, I repeated. I opened the folder I had brought with me. That is the funny part. Dad, you really thought that piece of paper gave you total control. You thought that because you were my father, and because you had a power of attorney, you owned me. I pulled out a document. It was not from the county clerk's office. It was a document with a thick blue cover, stamped with the seal of the Secretary of State. Do you remember what I said on the porch? I asked softly. I told you that the house you sold, that house actually was something else. Warren frowned. What? You sold a house that belonged to Maya Calloway, I said. But Maya Calloway does not own the property at 4920 Juniper Lane. The room went deadly silent. Even Mercer leaned forward. What are you talking about? Trent spat. Your name is on the mailbox. My name is on the mailbox, I said. But my name is not on the title. I slid the blue document across the table. 3 months before I deployed to Okinawa, I said. I met with an estate planner. I was going into a combat zone. I wanted to make sure that if something happened to me, my assets would be protected, so I transferred the deed. I pointed to the legal entity listed on the cover page. The house belongs to the Calloway Family Revocable Trust, I said. It is a separate legal entity, and according to the bylaws of that trust, which are filed with the state, any sale or transfer of real estate requires 2 signatures. I held up 2 fingers. Signature 1, the primary beneficiary, me. Signature 2, the independent trustee, a lawyer in Cheyenne named Mr. Henderson. I looked Warren dead in the eye. Your power of attorney gives you the right to sign for Maya Calloway as an individual. It does not give you the right to sign for the trust. You have 0 authority over that property, none. The moment you signed that deed as Maya Calloway, you were selling something that did not exist. Warren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a man who had just tried to fire a gun only to have it explode in his hand. But, he stammered, but the title company, Derek, they ran the search. They said it was clear. That brings me to the second twist, I said. I pulled out another sheet of paper. This one was the preliminary title report that Derek Harlan had generated. I looked at this last night, I said. I noticed something strange. The address listed at the top is correct, Juniper Lane, but look at the parcel number. I tapped the string of digits. That is not my parcel number, I said. That parcel number belongs to a vacant lot 3 streets over, a lot that has no trust, no mortgage, and no complications. I looked at Lena. Derek Harlan swapped the numbers. He ran the title search on a piece of dirt to get a clean report. Then he swapped the address back on the final contract. He baited and switched you. Lena, he knew he couldn't sell my house legally because of the trust, so he sold you a lie wrapped in paperwork that looked real. Lena let out a gasp. So, I didn't even buy the house? Even if the POA was valid? No, I said. You bought nothing. You signed a contract for a phantom property. The weight of the revelation crushed the room. Warren slumped in his chair. The narrative he had built for himself, that he was just a desperate father making a tough call, was gone. He was not just a thief. He was an incompetent one. He had tried to rob a vault that was already empty. You knew, Trent whispered. He stared at me with pure hatred. You knew this whole time. You let us do it. I did not know you would try to sell it, I said. I set up the trust to protect myself from death. Trent, not from my family. I never thought I would need protection from my own father. You set a trap, Trent shouted. He pulled at the cuffs, the metal clinking loudly against the table leg. You gamed us. You let us walk into this. You could have told us about the trust. You could have told Dad he didn't have the power. Why would I tell him? I asked. So he could find a way around it? So he could forge Mr. Henderson's signature too? You wanted this, Trent screamed. You wanted to see us in cuffs. You are sick. You trapped your own family. I stood up. I placed my hands flat on the table and leaned in until my face was inches from his. I did not set a trap. Trent, I said. My voice was low, dangerous. I put a deadbolt on my door. I installed a security system. I put my assets in a safe. That is what responsible people do. I looked at Warren, who was staring at the table, tears running down his face. I locked the door to keep strangers out, I said. The fact that you two decided to pick the lock, smash the window, and crawl inside to steal from me, that is not entrapment. That is burglary. I just locked the door properly. The person who tries to pry it open is the one at fault. I turned away from them. I could not look at them anymore. They were drowning, and they were furious that I wasn't drowning with them. I walked over to Lena. She was trembling. She looked up at me, her eyes red. So I have nothing, she whispered. The money is gone. The house isn't mine. I am ruined. Not necessarily, I said. I knelt beside her chair. Derek Harlan committed fraud. The title company he used was negligent. They didn't catch the parcel swap. That means their errors and omissions insurance is on the hook. I handed her a business card. It was for the Northbridge Legal Group. I cannot give you the house, I said gently. It is my home. It is in my trust. I am not giving it up, but I will help you get your money back. Lena looked at the card, then at me. How? We file a joint complaint, I said. You sue for fraud. I sue for title theft. We combine our cases. We present the trust documents, the fake parcel number, and the missing affidavit. We prove that the entire transaction was a fabrication by a licensed broker. Will that get my $300,000 back? She asked. It will get every penny back, I said. Plus damages. The insurance company will settle to avoid a trial because the evidence is overwhelming. But you have to do one thing. What? You have to testify against them, I said, jerking my head toward Warren and Trent. You have to testify that Warren told you I was unreachable. You have to testify that Trent was there pushing for the quick sale. You have to help me bury them so the insurance company sees that this was a conspiracy. Lena looked at Warren, the man who had served her coffee, the man who had played with her daughter, the man who had looked her in the eye and lied so he could pay a bookie. She wiped her face. She took the card. Okay, she said. Her voice was steady now. I will do it. Warren let out a low moan. Maya, don't, please. The trust. If the sale is void anyway, why do we have to go to jail? No harm, no foul, right? The house is still yours. I looked at him with pity. He still didn't get it. The harm isn't the house, Dad, I said. The harm is that I had to fly 6,000 miles to stop my father from robbing me. The harm is that you looked at me and saw a bank account. But the sale was impossible, Warren argued, grasping at straws. Because of the trust. So technically, we didn't sell anything. It is an attempted crime, not a real one. Tell that to the judge, Mercer interrupted. Attempted grand larceny and wire fraud carry the same prison time as the successful kind. And since you actually spent the money, that is theft. The fact that you sold a fake deed just adds forgery to the list. Warren slumped. The fight went out of him. He realized that the trust was not his savior. It was the final nail. Even if he had managed to trick the system, even if I hadn't come home, the moment the tax assessor realized the names didn't match the trust, the sale would have collapsed. He was walking into a wall from the very first day. He had destroyed his family for a heist that was mathematically impossible to win. "I am done," I said to Mercer. "I have given my statement. I have provided the trust documents. I am going to the motel to sleep." "We will handle the booking," Mercer said. "You should probably get some rest. Ms. Calloway, tomorrow is going to be a long day." I walked to the door. "Maya," Trent screamed one last time, "you can't leave us here. We are your blood." I paused. I did not turn around. "I know," I said. "That is the only reason I'm not asking the lieutenant to add emotional distress to the charges." I walked out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me, engaging with a heavy metallic thud. It sounded just like the deadbolt on my front door, the one I had installed to keep the bad things out. I finally felt safe. The trust had held. My preparation had held. The only thing that had broken was my heart, and I could fix that later. Right now, I had a war to finish. The wheels of justice do not turn quickly. They grind. They chew up time, energy, and patience until you feel like you are made of nothing but paper and ink. It had been 6 weeks since the arrests on my front lawn. The case had ballooned far beyond a simple domestic dispute in Sheridan County. Because Derek Harlan had crossed state lines to flee, and because the wire transfers involved federal banking regulations, the case had been elevated. It was no longer just Calloway versus Calloway. It was the state versus Harlan. Calloway and Calloway. I spent my days in conference rooms that smelled of floor polish and old coffee. I gave depositions until my voice was hoarse. I sat next to Lena Whitaker, who had transformed from a confused victim into a steely witness. We were an unlikely team, the soldier and the mother, united by the fact that the same men had tried to bankrupt us both. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Vance, called me into her office on a Tuesday morning. She handed me a thick packet of documents. "This is a request for a victim impact statement," Vance said. "We are preparing for the sentencing hearing for the plea deals, and the trial for Harlan if they catch him. The judge needs to know how this affected you, not just the math. Maya, the life part." I took the packet. It felt heavy. "And there is something else," Vance said. She leaned back in her chair. "Your father is talking, really talking this time. He is no longer hiding behind the misunderstanding defense." "What did he say?" I asked. Vance opened a file. "He gave a sworn statement this morning. He admitted that he wanted to call you. He admitted that on 3 separate occasions in May, he picked up the phone to ask for your permission to sell the house, but he didn't." "Why?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Because Trent stopped him," Vance said. "Your brother told him," and this is a direct quote, "Don't call her. She's in the military. She has government housing. She doesn't need the house like I do. If you call her, she will just say no out of spite." I stared at the wall. Hearing it out loud was different than suspecting it. Trent had weaponized my service against me. He had convinced our father that because I was strong, I did not need protection. He had convinced him that because I was independent, I deserved to be robbed. "Trent is being processed into a diversion program for the gambling debts," Vance continued. "The court is mandating financial control. His wages will be garnished for the next 10 years to pay restitution to Lena's insurance company. He is not going to prison, but he is going to be broke for a very long time." "He will hate that more than prison," I said. Later that afternoon, I saw Trent. It was a court-mandated meeting to sign the final asset separation agreement. He was sitting in the hallway, looking thinner, his flashy clothes replaced by a cheap button-down shirt. When he saw me, he stood up. He didn't look sorry. He looked desperate. "Maya," he said. He took a step toward me, but the bailiff put a hand on his chest. Trent stopped. "Maya, you can withdraw the complaint. I asked my lawyer. If you say it was a misunderstanding, The fraud charges against me drop. I can handle the debts. But the fraud charge, it kills my record. I won't be able to get a loan. I won't be able to get a decent job. I looked at him. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature. I am your brother, he hissed. You are ruining my life over a house you don't even live in right now. Just tell them you gave verbal permission. That is all it takes. One lie to save family. I am not doing this to punish you. Trent, I said. I am doing this to stop you. If I let you go, you will do it again. You will do it to Dad again. You will do it to the next Lena Whitaker. I won't, he pleaded. I swear. You swore when I left for Okinawa, I said. You swore you would watch out for Dad. Instead, you turned him into an accomplice. I walked past him. He shouted something after me. Something about how I was cold, how the military had turned me into a robot. I let the words bounce off me. I was not a robot. I was just the only person in the family who knew the difference between a mistake and a crime. That night, I was at the motel, trying to write the impact statement. I was staring at the blank page, trying to find the words to explain that they hadn't just sold a building, they had sold my safety. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. It was almost midnight. I hesitated, then picked up. Hello? Is this Maya Calloway? The voice was female, shaky, young. Yes, who is this? My name is Rowan, the voice said. Rowan Harlan. Derek is my uncle. I sat up straight on the edge of the bed. I am not supposed to talk to you. I know, she said, and I know he ran. I know he's a bad person. I am not calling to defend him. She paused. I could hear her breathing on the other end. It sounded like she was crying. The police were here, she said. They took his computers. They froze the business accounts. My mom, she worked as his receptionist. She didn't know what he was doing. She just answered the phones. But because her name is on the LLC paperwork, they are looking at her too. They are talking about conspiracy. I am sorry, I said, and I was. If you testify, Rowan said, her voice trembling, if you tell them about the missing page and the fake parcel number, they are going to bury everyone connected to that office. My mom will go to jail. My little sister will go to foster care. Our family will be destroyed. What are you asking me? I asked quietly. I am asking you to say it was just your dad, she whispered. Say your dad tricked Derek. Say Derek didn't know about the trust. If you say that, the heat comes off the agency. My mom stays safe. Please, you have your house back. You won. Why do you have to burn everyone else down? The question hung in the air. Why? It was the same question Trent had asked. It was the question of mercy versus justice. Rowan, I said, listen to me. Your uncle took a page out of a legal document and threw it in the trash so he could sell a stolen house to a single mother. He didn't just make a mistake. He engineered a trap. If I lie and say he was innocent, he will come back. He will open a new agency, and next year, he will do it to someone else. Maybe someone who doesn't have the money to fight back. Maybe someone who will end up on the street. But my family, she sobbed. I cannot save your family by sacrificing the truth, I said. I am sorry about your mom, truly, but if she signed the papers, she is part of it, and if I stay silent, the next victim is on my hands. You are heartless, she whispered. No, I said. I am just the one who has to clean up the mess your uncle made. I chose the truth. Rowan, not because I want to hurt you, but because the truth is the only thing that stops people like him. She hung up. I sat there in the silence of the motel room. My heart was pounding. It would have been easy to lie. It would have been easy to be the hero who showed mercy. But mercy to the predator is cruelty to the prey. I had to remember that. The next morning was the preliminary hearing. I drove to the courthouse. The sky was gray and heavy with impending rain. I walked through the metal detectors, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I saw Warren sitting on a bench outside courtroom 3. He was alone. Usually, Warren Calloway was the center of gravity. He was the guy telling jokes at the barbecue, the guy buying the first round at the bar, the guy who always had a story, He thrived on being the patriarch, the benevolent head of the family. Now he looked like a husk. He was wearing a suit that looked too big for him. His shoulders were slumped. He was staring at his hands that were shaking slightly. Trent was not with him. Trent was with his public defender in another room, the family unit. The us against the world team had shattered. Warren looked up and saw me. He did not smile. He did not wave. He looked at me with a mixture of shame and fear that broke my heart more than his anger ever could. He looked like a man who had realized, too late, that he had traded his daughter's love for a few months of easy living. He opened his mouth to speak, maybe to ask for forgiveness, maybe just to say hello, but then he closed it. He realized he had lost the right to speak to me. He was no longer my father. He was the defendant. I wanted to go to him. I wanted to hug him and tell him it would be okay, but I couldn't, because it wouldn't be okay. He had broken the one thing that holds a father and daughter together: safety. I walked past him. I did not stop. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the courtroom. The air inside was cool and smelled of wood and authority. I saw Lena sitting in the front row. She gave me a small, brave nod. I walked down the center aisle. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table next to the district attorney. I looked up at the seal of the court on the wall. Justice. For 2 months, I had told myself I was fighting for the house. I was fighting for the walls I painted and the floorboards I sanded. I was fighting for the equity and the investment. But as I sat there, waiting for the judge to enter, I realized that was not it at all. I was not here for the house. I could buy another house. I was here for the girl who went to Okinawa believing her father had her back. I was here for the woman who spent nights in a barrack 6,000 miles away, thinking she had a home to return to. I was here to prove that you cannot simply erase a person because they are inconvenient. I was here to draw a line in the sand. The bailiff stood up. All rise. I stood up. My spine was straight. My hands were steady. I was ready to speak, and this time, nobody was going to interrupt me. The sound of a gavel hitting mahogany is shorter and sharper than a gunshot, but it ends things just as permanently. Judge Holloway did not waste words. He sat high up on the bench, looking down at the scattered wreckage of my family's scheme over the rim of his glasses. The courtroom was silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. The court finds that the conveyance of the property at 4920 Juniper Lane was void ab initio, the judge said. His voice echoed off the high ceilings. The power of attorney utilized by the defendant, Warren Calloway, did not grant authority over the Calloway Family Revocable Trust. Furthermore, the transaction was predicated on a falsified title report and the willful removal of mandatory verification affidavits. He looked at the defense table. Warren shrank into his suit jacket. Trent stared at the table, his jaw clenched tight. Therefore, the judge continued, legal title is hereby restored immediately to the trust. The deed recorded on July 15th is struck from the record. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I stepped off the plane. It was done. The house was mine. The legal fortress I had built 2 years ago had held up against the siege. But the judge was not finished. Regarding the third-party purchaser, Ms. Whitaker, the court acknowledges the settlement agreement reached between the prosecution and the title insurance carrier. I looked over at Lena. She was squeezing a tissue in her hand, but she was smiling. It was a small, tired smile, but it was real, because we had fought together. The insurance company had folded. They had agreed to a full payout to cover her loss, plus damages for the negligence of their agents. She was walking away with her savings intact. She was not going to be the collateral damage in my war. She was going to be okay. The judge then turned his attention to the empty chair where Derek Harlan should have been sitting. A bench warrant remains in effect for Mr. Harlan. The judge said, the evidence presented in this hearing regarding the alteration of documents has been forwarded to the federal prosecutor. This court notes that since the investigation began, 4 other families have come forward with similar complaints against Mr. Harlan's agency. I felt a grim satisfaction. I was not just a victim anymore. I was the domino that knocked the whole corrupt tower down. Derek Harlan had thought I was an easy target, a soldier too far away to fight back. Instead, I had exposed a pattern of predation that had been rotting the community for years. Then came the sentencing for the plea deals. Warren stood up. He looked old. The swagger was gone. The father-knows-best attitude had evaporated. He pleaded guilty to misuse of fiduciary instruments. Because of his age and clean prior record, he avoided prison time, but the sanctions were heavy. He was placed on 5 years of probation. He was ordered to pay restitution for the legal fees, and most importantly, his name was added to a fraud registry. He could never hold a power of attorney for anyone ever again. He could never manage anyone else's money. The court had legally certified him as untrustworthy. Then it was Trent's turn. My brother stood up. He looked at me, hoping for a last-minute intervention. He wanted me to stand up and say he was a good boy who just made a mistake. I stayed seated. Trent received a suspended sentence, contingent on his completion of a strict financial accountability program, but the real punishment was the debt. The court ruled that the money he had borrowed from the fraudulent sale was now a personal liability. The insurance company would be coming for him, his wages would be garnished, his tax returns would be seized. For the first time in his 35 years, Trent Calloway was going to have to pay for his own life. No daddy to bail him out, no sister to rob, just him and the consequences. The gavel banged one last time. Court is adjourned. The room erupted into the noise of shuffling papers and scraping chairs. I stood up. I shook hands with the district attorney. I walked over to Lena. We did not say much. We just nodded at each other. It was a nod of mutual survival. She gathered her purse and walked out, free to start over. I turned to leave. Maya. The voice was tentative. I stopped near the heavy oak doors. Warren was standing there. Trent was a few steps behind him, looking sulky and defeated. Warren took a step toward me. He forced a smile. It was a painful thing to watch. It was the smile of a man trying to reboot a computer that had already crashed. Well, Warren said, that was intense. But it is over now, right? The judge ruled. You got the house back. Lena got her money. No harm done in the end. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who had sold my sanctuary for beer money and a quiet life. No harm done? I asked. I know. Warren said quickly. We made mistakes, big ones, and we are paying for them. I have probation. Trent is broke. We learned our lesson. Honey, we really did. He opened his arms. He actually opened his arms. Come here, he said. Give your old man a hug. Let us close this chapter nicely. We are still family. We can go get some dinner. My treat? Well, what is left of my money anyway? He laughed. He thought a joke would fix it. He thought that because the gavel had banged, we instantly reverted to the default setting of father and daughter. He thought I was still the girl who sought his approval. I did not step into his hug. I took a step back. Warren's arms faltered. He looked confused. Maya? I reached into my bag. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not a court document. It was a letter I had written in the motel room the night before. I held it out to him. What is this? He asked. That is a notice of communication boundaries. I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice of the independent trustee. Warren took the paper. He squinted at it. From this moment forward, I said, I will not answer your phone calls. I will not answer your texts. If you have a medical emergency, you call 911. If you have a legal matter regarding the probation, you contact my lawyer. If you want to speak to me for any other reason, you send an email. I will reply if and when I choose to. Warren's face went pale. Maya, you can't be serious. I am your father. You are treating me like a stranger. I am treating you like a liability. I said, because that is what you proved yourself to be. You lost the privilege of being my father when you forged my name. But I want to fix it, Warren pleaded. He looked at the people filing out of the courtroom, lowered his voice. Just give me a hug. Let us close this nicely. For the sake of appearances, people are watching. I looked him in the eye. I am not closing it nicely. Dad, I said, I am closing it right. I walked past him. Trent stepped in my path. He looked frantic. Maya. Wait, he said. Look, the judge. He garnished everything. I have nothing. My landlord evicted me this morning because of the conviction. I have nowhere to go. He looked at me with those puppy dog eyes that had worked on our mother for years. I just need a place to crash, he said, just for a few weeks, until I get sorted with the debt program. The house is huge. You have 3 bedrooms. I will stay in the basement. I won't make a sound. Please. I looked at my brother. I saw the cycle trying to restart. He wanted to move in. Then he would ask for grocery money, then gas money. Then he would find a way to make me feel guilty for having a paycheck while he suffered. I reached into my bag again. I pulled out a brochure I had picked up from the courthouse lobby. It was a trifold pamphlet with blue text. I handed it to him. What is this? Trent asked, staring at it. That is the address for the Sheridan County Financial Rehabilitation Housing Program. I said, it is a shelter for people in the diversion program. They have beds, they have meals, and they have counselors who will help you learn how to budget the money you have left. Shelter? Trent sneered. You want me to go to a shelter while you sleep in a 3-bedroom house? Yes, I said. Maya, you are cold, he spat. I am not cold. Trent, I said, I am secure. I leaned in close to him. Do not come to Juniper Lane, I said. Do not drive past. Do not knock on the door. If you step 1 foot on my property, I will have your probation revoked so fast your head will spin. I turned my back on them. I walked down the marble hallway. I could hear Warren calling my name, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and sorrow. Maya, Maya! I did not slow down. I pushed through the front doors of the courthouse and stepped out into the Wyoming air. It had rained while we were inside. The clouds were breaking apart, and the sun was hitting the wet pavement, making everything glitter. I drove to the house. There were no cars in the driveway. The station wagon was gone. Lena had moved out that morning, true to her word. I walked up the path. The grass was a little overgrown. I would have to mow it this weekend. I noticed the flower pot Trent had kicked over during the confrontation. I bent down and set it upright. I walked up the steps to the porch. The smart lock was still there, the one Derek Harlan had installed. I took out my phone, opened the app I had reset an hour ago, and punched in the new code. The lock chirped. The deadbolt slid back with a heavy, satisfying thud. I pushed the door open. The house was empty. It smelled of lemon cleaner and the faint, lingering scent of Lena's coffee. The hallway stretched out in front of me, bathed in the afternoon light. I walked in. My boots echoed on the hardwood floor. Thud, thud, thud. I walked through the living room. I walked into the kitchen. I ran my hand along the granite countertop. It was just a house. It was wood and glass and drywall. It was an asset. But as I stood there, listening to the silence, I realized it was more than that. Warren and Trent had tried to sell it because they saw it as a piggy bank. They thought that because I was family, my boundaries were permeable. They thought my no was just a suggestion. I walked to the back door. I knelt down and looked at the bottom of the frame. There, scratched into the wood, were the initials I had carved 2 years ago. C. I traced the letters with my thumb. I stood up. I looked around the empty room. I did not feel lonely. I felt a profound, quiet strength. I had lost my family. The version of them I wanted to believe in was gone, replaced by the reality of who they were. It hurt. It would hurt for a long time. But I had kept the one thing that actually mattered. I had kept my agency. I had proven that I was not a resource to be harvested. I was a fortress to be reckoned with. I walked back to the front door. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut. I keyed in the lock code. The deadbolt engaged. Click. I rested my hand on the cool metal of the door handle. This house used to be an anchor, I whispered to the wind. Now it is a border. I turned around and walked down the steps, ready to start the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to Maya's story. It was a long journey from the barracks of Okinawa to that final moment on the porch, but we made it. I want to know where you are listening from right now. Are you driving, cooking, or maybe winding down for the night? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading about where our community is tuning in from. If you enjoyed this story of justice and boundaries, please hit that subscribe button for Lila Revenge Stories, like the video, and smash that hype button so we can get this story out to more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe, and remember, trust is good, but control is safer.